So all your films, Unfreedom, Bebak, and India's Daughter, they have something actually a lot to do with body, sex, and gender, and how violence is involved. In case of Shazia's film, psychological violence, and in the case of the other two films, physical and psychological violence. So how all these things are intertwined. My question to all three of you is, what about in respect to censorship of films or any kind of art actually, what about sex and gender is scary to any authority figure? And my the second part of that question is, and something that Leslie said, um murder is legally wrong, obviously, but of course it's also morally wrong. I mean, it's not right to kill somebody, but violence doesn't attract the kind of opposition from authority figures as sex and gender does. Issues of sex and gender in films. So, what is it about these issues that kind of scares authority figures? They start calling films that creates unnatural passions and things like that.
Okay. I mean, I'm going to make my intervention incredibly brief, because for me, gender comes into it. And it's all about what is so threatening to the authorities about this. The most fundamental threat there is power, that their power will be taken away. Their power, the minute they accord equality to women, they have problems. Their patriarchy is threatened. Chile, just last week, the country of Chile, voted 79% of the country, which means a lot of men voted for this, that no legislation shall be made without at least 50% women involved in that process. Iceland, good few years ago, 3-4 decades ago, maybe even 4, all the women in Iceland went on strike for 1 day. 1 day. They walked out of their homes, they left the children inside the homes, they walked out of their jobs as secretaries and bank tellers. The country collapsed. They won their fight for equal pay, I think it was the fight there. That's what they're frightened of. That's why gender is such a massive issue for regimes that are patriarchal.
Yeah, I totally agree with Leslie that in one large way, it is a gender issue, right? It's the most people who are in power, who have run this world, they are men, and I like to say that most of them are crazy men. They are not, they cannot buy the idea that women are equal and better in many cases, maybe most cases. I mean, we have seen in this current pandemic which rulers around the world, which prime ministers have done a better job in terms of running their countries. It's kind of very obvious to everybody who has run the nations better. It is a huge threat for half of the population, and then the population that's running that half of the men population, to say that how can we have a world in which it is just possible suddenly that just women are everywhere and they are controlling things, and I mean, just how crazy it is that in 2020 we still don't have an equal pay for equal work. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just like 70 years ago, 60 years ago, we were looking at the women didn't have right to vote. I mean, what are we talking about? So it is obvious. It is very obvious, blatantly clear to the world that the rulers are men, and they want to control the narrative and stories in a way that women cannot hold.
And the money, because they are
of course,
greedy to find these patriarchs.
it all boils down to sort of the financial equality, right? Because then that gives them the freedom to do things. So 100%, that's one major thing here. I think second is also, it is also absolutely essential, I think, for the powers to sort of control the sexuality of the whole population, right? To kind of, if we just kind of, be free and happy about fucking, I think it's somehow a issue. I don't know what the fuck is the issue, but I think it's somehow the issue. It's just like we don't consider sex can be art or sex can be pleasure. It is always goes back to sort of the religious morality of procreation and sex somehow to be controlled. And again, I think it is very tied with gender. Of course, I think it is very, very tied with that. But that is the problem. So that's always the biggest issue. Otherwise, if we are bombing cars in the mainstream Hollywood, Bollywood films, that's just not problem. We're chopping people's heads. That's kind of okay. I think we can. So I think that's everybody is okay with. I mean, you look at the censorship guidelines and you will be totally surprised. The first guideline says a violence that can, I don't know what, blah blah blah, should not be allowed. Oh my goodness! Every Bollywood film that you give a certificate, a youth certificate, starts with blowing up a car. I mean, what are you even talking about? It's just there's no sense to these guidelines. So yeah, I mean, I rest my case on that.